Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. We're into the semi-finals of the Chessable Masters, and what a game I've got for you here. So this was in the match between Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa and Anish Giri. Praggnanandhaa just on flying form at the moment, 16 years old, and he's facing the 27-year-old Anish Giri, an 11-year age gap between them. That's quite extraordinary. You know, this year, Pragg just seems to go from tournament to tournament, picking up experience, rating points, and, well, so far in the Chessable Masters, he's played superbly. And he's taking on Giri in the Grunfeld. Giri is incredibly well prepared. So Pragg had to be at his absolute best in facing this opening. Very sharp indeed. In fact, this was game 2. They drew the first game. And interesting that Pragg goes in for this old main line of the Grunfeld. So this is already highly theoretical. Years ago, back when, for example, Spassky was playing this line with white regularly, beat Fischer in this line. The old main line was Queen c7 and then Rook d8. This is a so-called Smyslov system. But these days, everyone goes b6. That's the normal move here. And Queen d2 is probably the most popular move, but h4, well, that's very much in the spirit of the age. Launching Harry down the board, and in this case, well, black probably isn't going to be mated on the h-file, but it's getting that pawn to h6, which can be a bit difficult for black. And Giri, as one might expect, plays in the theoretically approved way with e6, so that opens up this diagonal, and h5, and our queen h4. It's actually been seen in quite a few games. For example, in the 2020 Candidates Tournament, Wang Hao played this against Vachier-Lagrave, and it went like this, and then f3. That's sort of, you could say, the main line. But it's here that Pragg banged out a novelty. He played Queen c1. Now, that is a pretty strange move. Leaves this pawn to be taken. When I fed this into the old neural networks, I checked Stockfish here, and it doesn't give this as the first move, its first choice, but it's its second choice. And perhaps if one ran the computer for longer, the program for longer, perhaps it would even flick to first place. But anyway, Stockfish, the latest iteration of Stockfish, seems to think that Queen c1 is a very playable move. Okay, let's try to understand what's going on here. So Giri exchanged. It's quite clear that he'd been caught out because he was taking a lot of time here. Okay, what happens on queen takes pawns? Not the only pawn that can be taken in the position, but let's just see. This didn't happen. And this is quite subtle. Rook b1. So clearly this rook might swing up the board to attack the queen. And there's something else as well, that actually after bishop here, bishop b5. This is the tricky move. Threatening to take here. And when that's defended, then the knight comes here, and actually the queen is in huge trouble. So, well, for example, here, and the queen is trapped. So it's a very interesting way of playing. Or coming back to this position after rook b1, what if the queen tries to escape? Well, then a4 keeps the queen bottled in. Of course, that pawn can't be taken because of bishop b5 here. And that queen gets pushed all the way across the other side of the board. And again, it's getting trapped, actually. So that's a tricky one. I mean, not absolutely obvious that this is a bad move. I mean, rook b1 is a fantastic idea. But instead of that, in this position, Giri took the other pawn, and why not? I mean, in this case, the queen is definitely not getting trapped. And in fact, I mean, White's follow-up is rather extraordinary because it's so slow. Rook d1. Okay, so now d5 potentially could come. There's also h6. I mean, the queen could still be in trouble here. So knight a5 opens the diagonal for the queen to retreat. Knight c3 pushes the queen back. And now bishop e2. So the bishop may come here. That's obviously a threat at the moment. So it's still a very tricky position. So bishop d7 defends against that threat. And then h6. Now, in getting this pawn to h6, White has achieved a great deal. So this just keeps the king locked in and sets up potential mating net on the back rank. But also if this bishop is exchanged, then of course playing a queen to g7 would be mate. And this pain is a complete pain for black. It really is very difficult. And watch how Pragg exploits this. Bishop f3. Hits the queen. Bishop c6 blocks. d5. That has to be taken. And now bishop d4. Very simple operation to exchange this one off. I mean, if that's blocked, then this diagonal is opened. That's the problem. And the king is actually in big trouble. So rook d8 supports the pawn. Bishop takes, king takes, and now, I mean, I have no idea whether this is still preparation. I doubt it, but I mean, obviously, Pragg had prepared the line to some extent, but he understood exactly what he had to do here. Knight takes d5. It's really vigorous. At first, I thought that perhaps rook d4 and then, you know, pile up on the d pawn. That's also an idea, but knight d5 straight away is absolutely spot on. So clearly White is ready to play the queen to the long diagonal. So bishop takes. Now White has to recover the piece. So queen d2, that's pinned. So obviously here and here, well, we can see our first sight of a mate threat on the back rank. So after queen d2, well, Giri understandably played the queen over to e7, but it's actually inaccurate. I mean, finding the best defense here, I think, is all but impossible. But in fact, well, let's try to understand why. Queen b8 is actually the best idea, and after this check, this is the point that actually the knight bounces round to e5. This is still extremely difficult to defend with that pawn on h6, which means that the king is always exposed. Very difficult in practice. But queen e7 is definitely inaccurate. Check. Diagonal has to be blocked. Rook takes d5. Now rook c8. And here comes another excellent move. Just spot on. Just have a little think. How would you play here with White? White to play. Cheers. Well, if the queen nudges to the side, then knight c4, and once again the knight returns to the middle. Still better for White, but black has a chance. But after rook c8, hitting the queen, rook e1 is an excellent move. So White gains a tempo, getting that rook into the game from the corner. And yeah, if that's taken, rook takes, and you can see that that rook is absolutely fantastic on the 7th rank. So after rook here, queen c7 played. In fact, it's possible to take here and play rook d6, threatening to take here, exploiting the back rank. And after f5, bishop d5, just completely dominating that knight is actually incredibly strong for white. But queen a3 played, also very good. And kind of understandable, you know, in this kind of position, when the queens are still on the board, then of course there are just more mating motifs for white. And queen a3 is a very attractive move, obviously wanting to support a rook coming into e7. And it's such a difficult position for black. Knight c4 played, queen e7, and well, here black should exchange off. I mean, it's obviously very good for white, but it's not yet over. But knight e5 played straight away. Of course, it's a very understandable move because Giri wanted to break the connection and reach a position like this, where black certainly has chances to defend there. You know, black has guarded the 7th rank. But after knight e5, well, the move was rook takes knight. It's an absolute killer. So the rook has to be taken, and now rook d7, and that's the end of the game. Giri must have missed that after the check. You don't play king here because of queen takes pawn check, but instead bishop d1. The queen bounces back and protects the pawn and covers the mate. However, queen e5 check is winning. He must have just forgotten that after bishop d1, it can bounce out to b3. He resigned here because if king g8, bishop b3 check, that's the point. And this leads to mate. Okay, let me take you through right to the end. Let's take all the pieces and mate on h8. Wow. What a powerful game. Pragg played with such vigour. I mean, first of all, excellent opening preparation with queen c1 that, well, managed to confuse Giri, who is a great theoretician himself. That's one thing, very clever preparation. But after that, you know, there were, I mean, just some fantastic ideas. But yeah, as I said, played with such vigour. Getting that pawn to h6, absolutely crucial. And then powering through with d5 and taking that pawn here, really nice. So temporary piece sacrifice, but it worked out perfectly. And then, yeah, this move, rook e1, and black is under massive pressure there. And finally, Giri cracked. That was the final position. Now, that was only the second game in their 4-game set. In fact, Giri managed to hit back, and after 4 games it was 2-2, but Pragg was too much for him in the blitz and was just sharper and spotted a couple of tactics and breezed through. So in the final we have Praggnanandhaa against Ding Liren, who defeated Carlsen, played a brilliant 4th game and edged that set. So Pragg against Ding. It'll be over 2 days, starting, so 25th of May. I'm commentating live on Chess24 at 1800 hours Central European time. So do join me. And for the duration of the event, my Kalashnikov course is on sale. Do check it out at chessable.com. Thanks for watching.